Hello, my name is Adam. I'm the coach of the Titletown Tyrantrums, part of the National Exhibition Syndicate, and I'm going to bring you the recap of my team and my Week 4 match against the New England Tentacruels. If you haven't watched the previous 3 matches or the draft recap, go back and do that first. Cool. Alright, so we're going to get right into it. We started this week at 1-2, facing the New England Tentacruels, who are also at 1-2. Going into this week, I decided that I wanted to try to focus on shutting down the Mega Charizard and weakening the Zapdos and the Jellicent as much as possible. I've been walled by Jellicents before, and when tearing up on Showdown, I have been swept by Mega Charizards before, so I wanted to do the best that I could. I know that Zapdos is also a pain, and I used regular Gardevoir last season, so I kind of have a feel for what it can do. So building this team, really the only complete unknown that I had is Volcanion, who was drafted by JTN 2000 and the New England Tentacruels, kind of out of the blue. Like, no one really knew what it was going to do, but someone was going to draft it just, for the sake of drafting it. So building this team, I wanted to keep in mind that the biggest threats I was probably going to have to face were things like Charex, Zapdos, Mamoswine, Lucario, and Volcanion. The first Pokemon that I elected to bring, as you see in front of you, is Milotic. Elena, as always, with leftovers in Marble Scale. I elected Marble Scale over its other ability, Competitive, because I figured that between Jellicent, Zapdos, Gardevoir, and even potentially Claydol, something would potentially status me, and I just didn't want to deal with it. So Elena has Recover, Ice Beam, Scald, and Toxic. I chose Toxic over Dragon Tail, just because, I really don't know. This is a while ago. Dragon Tail probably would have been just as smart to phase out the Charex, but I think I chose Toxic to try to wear down things like the Jellicent and the Zapdos and the Snorlax, which would prove to be more of a problem than Mega Charizard X. I think that was my reasoning. It's been a while, guys. Spoiler alert, it's after week 8. It's, week 9 right now. I'm so far behind. In one of these videos, there's going to be like, oh, hey, here's what's up, but it's not going to be this week because I'm sick and tired. So, anyways, that's Elena. Next one up is Enzo the Pinsir with Moxie, obviously becoming Aerolite when a Mega Evolves first turn. Jolly with Attack and Speed, Close Combat, Swords Dance, Return, and Quick Attack. I elected for Close Combat to hit the Snorlax and the Mamoswine, and the Lucario, and even the Meloetta, which is part normal, over Earthquake this week. Also Swords Dance and Return. I've pretty much decided that Swords Dance is almost more standard than running Close Combat and Earthquake, or Close Combat and Knockoff or something. Having that Swords Dance option is just invaluable with how fast and strong Mega Pinsir is naturally. But yeah, we've seen Enzo plenty of times. We know what he does, and he does it well. Next up we have Jeremy, the Life Orbed Noivern with Frisk, as always, Draco Meteor, Dark Pulse, Focus Blast, and Taunt. I elected Taunt this week because Noivern outspeeds unboosted Mega Charizard X and can taunt it, and Draco almost OHKOs it, I believe. I think it's really, really close. Enough so that if it doesn't OHKO, it will put it within Mega Pinsir range. But I usually run Taunt when I face Mega Charizard X with my fastest Pokemon because I don't want to deal with it setting up on me. Other than that, pretty standard Dark Pulse for the Jellicent, and the Claydol and Focus Blast for the Snorlax if worse came to worse, and the Lucario as well. Next up, we have Tyler the Slurpuff with Search Spray and Unburden, running Aromatherapy, Belly Drum, Drain Punch, and Play Rough. Drain Punch, of course, for Lucario and Snorlax and Mamoswine, and then Aromatherapy for any statuses from the Zapdos, the Jellicent, the Gardevoir. I didn't want to get status this week because it really wears your team down quickly. That's why I have Aromatherapy on Tyler this week. Next up, we have Rose the Rose Raid with the Assault Vest and Technician, with Sludge Ball, Energy Ball, Shadow Ball, and Hidden Power Rock. Bulky Special Sweeper set, generally the set that I run on it. It's such a solid set. I can't say enough about how good running this kind of especially defensive set is. Obviously, I don't use it as defensive wall, so it's usually my special attacker and special defender. I elected Hidden Power Rock because Zapdos, Mamoswine, Char-X, Ariados, and Volcanion all get hit super effective by it. Obviously, I probably elect Energy Ball on Mamoswine, but it can't really switch into a Hidden Power Rock. But I needed something to hit just about everything on his team with Roserade because Roserade really is one of my best special attackers on my team. It hits harder than Noivern, it lives longer than Noivern, generally speaking, as long as I don't, leave it on like a Fire Punch or something. But that Hidden Power Rock, I knew that if I had to, worst case scenario, fight Volcanion, Charizard, and Zapdos with just Roserade, I wanted to be able to hit them for super effective. Then obviously Shadow Ball just for coverage on Claydol and Gardevoir. Although Teletron does just as well. And then finally we have Kai the Mew with Expert Belt and Synchronize with Ice Beam, Nasty Plot, Scald, and Earth Power. Earth Power, of course, for the Charizard and Volcanion. Scald for the Claydol and Mamoswine. And Ice Beam for Zapdos. It's not the greatest coverage for the entire team, but I run Nasty Plot on Mew if I think that the bigger issue is going to be, hitting hard. Sometimes with Mew, with Nasty Plot, I like sending it out, turn 1, maybe setting up a Nasty Plot if my opponent's not expecting it, and then seeing how much damage I can do with it before I have to call it back because I'm going to die. But just not a standard set, but I like running Expert Belt Mew with maybe some sort of setup. And I thought that if anything, I really need Ice Beam for the Zapdos and Earth Power for the Charizard and the Lucario. So yeah, this was the team that I decided to bring. I expected my opponent to bring some combination of Zapdos, Mamoswine, Snorlax, Gardevoir, Charizard, Lucario, and Volcanion. With things like Roserade and Galvantula on my team, I wasn't sure if my opponent really leaned towards something like Jellicent. And I just, I didn't anticipate the Meloetta. I didn't think that it really helped my opponent any. So it wasn't top of my priority list, and I didn't think Ariados would come because with the potential for sticky webs on both sides, I think you'd rather use that slot for something more valuable on your team. So in just a second we will talk about the match and we will see how it all turned out. Alright guys, and then switching into the match, as you can see, the New England Tentacruels, my opponent elected to bring Volcanion, Zapdos, Claydol, Mamoswine, Snorlax, and Charizard. Immediately, I had Claydol last season, so I also kind of know what it likes to do. My biggest question mark, of course, is Volcanion, and I really didn't want to see the Snorlax just because bulky Snorlax is a pain in the butt. Otherwise, I felt pretty confident that I matched up at least decently well with what my opponent decided to bring. So I elected to lead Roserade, thinking that it had the best coverage for just about anything that my opponent might start with. I could hit Charizard with a Hidden Power Rock, Claydol with an Energy Ball, Zapdos with a Hidden Power Rock, Volcano with a Hidden Power Rock, Mamoswine with an Energy Ball. Really the only thing that I couldn't hit for super effective was the Snorlax, and if that were the case, I would just switch out. But other than that, I thought that Roserade had the best overall coverage to lead with. I managed to get lucky, and he missed his Ice Crash on the first turn. That would have OHKO'd Roserade, which would have been completely unfortunate. But that's the risk, I think, that you running non-super moves, as we learned last week with Slurpuff, when you don't run a 100% super effective or 100% accurate moves, and then you need them to hit, like that Ice Crash first turn, then they will miss, like my Play Rough did. So, it sucks. It's not a great way to start a battle if you're my opponent, but also it's the risk that you run. And after missing my Play Rough last week, I really can only feel so bad about a miss like that. So I figured he would set up first turn. I didn't think that it was necessary to switch out on the first turn. I thought that it was easier just to scare him out. Almost all Charizard X's teams I think they have a free turn, like if you send Charizard in on a Rose Raid, you expect, oh, my opponent's not going to leave a Rose Raid in on my Charizard, that's a free D-Dance. But because of Technician boosted Hidden Power, I knew I could do a ridiculous amount and either force the switch, or at least take it down low enough that I could quick attack it with Pinsir later. So of course I used Hidden Power again, because if he decided that, he didn't need it, he could sack it off against Hidden Power otherwise. Snorlax really is my opponent's best switch in here, I think. So, obviously Rose Raid, as I said, doesn't have great coverage for Snorlax. And so I wasn't going to leave him in at this point. I decided that I'll let Milotic take whatever hit it happened to dish out. Milotic is essentially my defensive wall at this point. I can't remember what move I went for, so that's kind of unfortunate. It was most likely Toxic, but getting the double para from the Body Slam Paralysis sucks. I guess that's kind of my exchange for getting the first turn miss on Ice Wheel Crash from Mamoswine, is I get paralyzed 2 turns in a row. At this point, I finally hit my Toxic, only to find out that Snorlax has the ability Immunity, so it can't be Toxic. Sucks. It's unfortunate. I did not know that Snorlax got Immunity. I didn't even really think about it. I don't really know what ability Snorlax normally runs. I really didn't pay much attention to it. I was planning to just hit it with a close combat. I'm hoping to Toxic and force it to, try to force the Snorlax to rest up, so I could hit it with a close combat or something. At this point, I decided to see what item it had, which was a Chople Berry. And also I decided that I was going to, at this point, hit it with something powerful like Life Orb, Draco Meteor, and really Jeremy he did his job, which is to tell me what item the Snorlax had, and that was kind of it. I figured that Snorlax would go for rest at this point, which is why I did not switch Rose Raid out that turn. If Sludge Bomb had managed to kill, I thought maybe it might do enough damage, not quite. When it didn't and he used rest, I figured I have a free turn to switch into Pinsir. And Swords Dance, because if he decides to leave Snorlax in, then Snorlax is going to get hit with a +2 close combat. If he decides to switch it out, I get a free Swords Dance. Really, it's a win-win in that situation. That's kind of the situation that he put himself in by running rest without the Chesto Berry. So I took Volcanion out in 1 hit with +2 return. I didn't want to run the risk of Zapdos doing something snarky, which is why I switched my +2 Pinsir out. I didn't mind the agility on Zapdos all that much, because worst case scenario, I knew that I could live a Thunderbolt with Rose Raid and hit it with Hidden Power Rock. Also, I figured that since it hadn't set up special attack, Mew could live a Thunderbolt, which it did. But yeah, at this point, you see, I forgot that Zapdos had roosted, losing its flying type. If I had thought about that in advance, I probably would use different moves since Ice Beam is no longer super effective. Maybe even use that turn to set up. Regardless, Mew goes down. Mew really didn't get to do much, but it got to do enough. At this point, I knew that Rose Red would easily live a Thunderbolt and I could bring it in on Zapdos. And at this point, the biggest concern I still had was the Snorlax. I knew I could take Charizard X out, and I knew I could take Claydol out. I wasn't worried at all about either of those. Snorlax really was the biggest concern left. But because it was still asleep, I knew that Pinsir could come in. I knew it couldn't OHKO me with anything. I did enough damage to it. Pinsir probably didn't have to die there, but it was necessary, the way that things played out. My opponent electing to roost with Mega Charizard after seeing how much Hidden Power did. I understand why he did it, but I definitely would have tried to take Rose Ray out instead, because I don't think that Slurpuff matches up terribly well with Claydol one-on-one, especially because my coverage move was Drain Punch. So, I don't know how I feel about, that play from my opponent. I think I would have Flare Blitzed Rose Raid and done as much damage as possible, knowing that it is a special defensive and not a physically defensive Pokemon. But at this point, the game was basically done. With the Assault Vest, I could live basically any special hit that Claydol did. And barring a play rough miss, even if Rose Raid went down to like an Earthquake, Claydol was low enough that I could play rough it and kill it. So we got a 2-0 without Slurpuff ever hitting the field, which is probably good for him. He needed a week on the bench after missing his play rough last week. But yeah, not a whole lot to say about this match. I think that there were a couple different instances of hacks in both directions. A couple pairs with Milotic definitely didn't help the situation. And the fact that Volcanion really didn't get to do anything. I'm not sure what kind of set it was running, what kind of moves it might have used. Yeah, that's about it. Hope they come back soon. Bye!